Talamoana Exiles. This is a nice, chill Monday night here after work, just before I'm about to go to bed, and I saw that there was a PoE2 interview that I missed at Gamescom 2023 with none other than Chris Wilson and Jonathan Rogers, and it appears to be about both Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. So, going into this blind, haven't seen anything, I'm going to react to it. Let's see how this goes. Never done something like this before. Okay.
Path of Exile 2 is here at Gamescom, and the big focus for the team seems to be showing off the Druid. Joining us today is game director Jonathan Rogers, and Chris, you're here too.
Surprise.
Surprise! It's
Surprise.
really, really good to see you. Look, Path of Exile 2 seems to be getting a lot of new player interest, myself included. You know, I've been playing a lot of Diablo 4, and then Path is...
Wow. Okay, so we are 22 seconds in, and the D word has already been said. He's not wrong, though. Diablo 4 is the best advertisement for PoE and PoE2 in years. So this guy's not wrong at all.
is just doing a lot of interesting things that have really piqued my interest. Why do you think new players are so intrigued by what you're showing?
I really think it's just the pure action focus that we have in PoE2 now. I mean, with PoE1, often the complaint was that the game just didn't play like an action game well enough, and that's just something I really wanted to put in the ground for PoE2. You know, we definitely want to make sure that you can go in there, you're rolling around, and playing it like an action game. That's just something we want to make sure that we actually have good sort of action game credentials there.
I'm kind of shocked he didn't bring up the visuals. I think that's actually the biggest aspect to PoE2. We know the depth is there. We know the gameplay is there for Path of Exile. What it's been lagging behind in many other games is its visual acuity. Like Diablo 4, Lost Ark, even Last Epoch. I mean, their visuals are better than Path of Exile 1. Path of Exile 2 is a massive improvement in terms of visual quality, animation quality. The UI looks great as well. The art direction of the items, that's the biggest leap. Of course, they're also pushing the action focus of this, the Dark Souls inheritance, lots of dodging. But I do think at the end of the day, it's going to be really close to PoE1. I don't think it's going to be that different. Once we get our hands on these characters, we're going to make gods, just as we did in PoE1. We'll see what they can do, though. I'll let them talk.
Yeah, Chris, one of the mechanics that were demoed during ExileCon was the roll, no cooldown, and that mechanic just flows so well into the combat.
Absolutely.
Why did you say we have to have this in the game?
Well, Jonathan's team has been working really hard on getting the action to feel just right. And one of the things they quickly identified is if you have the ability to get in and out of combat quickly, then it means you can have much more interesting mechanics because you can have skills that close the distance, you can dodge roll out when the hit is coming. It just makes the action feel a lot better.
And I mean, the cancel that you have there is just super important. Like, we effectively couldn't have skills that took a long time in PoE1 because you were locked in, you couldn't do anything about it. When you can have a dodge cancel, it just means that you can actually have the longer skills, you can actually have that stuff because you can always just get out of there if you need to. So yeah, it allows you to get those longer attacks.
Can we appreciate the lightning effects here? Do you see the individual impacts the lightning bolts are having on the ground?
Get those
and they're leaving
attacks
behind
the
distinct
Druid
marks?
Gameplay has been a big focus here at Gamescom. What can you tell us about your design philosophy with this character and how you're trying to set it apart from anything you've done before?
So the main
Combos. That's my guess. They are combo focused with this druid. 100% they're trying to push combos. Multiple skills, multiple playstyles, all rolled into one, which is a hard sell for some PoE players.
thing that we want to achieve with the Druid is have a hybrid melee and spellcaster build. And this is actually something that was really hard to do in PoE1 just because of the fact that you couldn't really allocate, well, to get a bit technical here, we're a bit of a technical game. You couldn't allocate, if you put all your points in spellcasting, then you'd be more powerful as a spellcaster. You put all your points in melee stuff, you'd be a more powerful melee character. And becoming a hybrid was always just worse for you with regard to balance. So by making...
Well, now they can swap weapons with the double passive skill tree system now too, which is just awesome.
By making the systems as we have in PoE2, it finally means that this kind of class, where you actually do have a hybrid like that, becomes actually possible. And then the Druid is obviously a really great realization of that, and plus people just love being a bear. So that's a good one.
He is right. People love being a bear. I love being a bear. This is what I'm going to start PoE 2 as. My wife said she's going to as well.
It is pretty cool. You also showed off the Warrior and Huntress. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about those two classes?
Yeah, so with the Warrior, we're going for just like pure, like, melee slams, like hard hitting, this kind of stuff. But I think a really key one for that we discovered was the importance of being able to move as you do attacks.
Yeah.
Like you really want that feeling of being a freight train when you're kind of doing the thing. Like so you're moving forward all the time. We've got skills like rolling slam, where your character's just like rolling forwards, doing slams as they go, this kind of thing. So that's kind of.
They have to feel fluid, though. Fluidity is key. I remember watching Matho play at the demo at ExileCon, and it looked like some of the skills were a little clunky because of these rolling abilities, right? Gonna need to be fluid as well. I'm sure we'll be able to get into that spot, at the beginning of the game. If you're leveling something like Ground Slam or Sunder, until you get enough attack speed, it does feel a little clunky. I think you're going to be able to itemize or use your tree to eventually get to that spot, right? Or at least that's what I hope.
Kind of what that character is about exploring. And then something
so
like
good.
the Huntress, this is really another kind of hybrid thing that we're trying to do there, is like explore the idea of a character that can be both melee and range, and what it would mean to connect those two things together. So we've got things like the Whirling Slash, which is a melee skill, but it requires you to get out of it before it explodes, which means that you need to find some way out of combat, out of melee range. And then we've also got skills to be doing that. So you've got skills to that are at melee, you've got skills that are at range, and then you've got skills to connect the two. We're kind of flying in and out, and basically trying to find ways to sort of get that synergy between all of those elements in order to make something that's really fun. And it just feels like you're darting in and out of combat all the time.
One of the things fans really wanted me to ask about was respecking. So,
here we go.
Have you talked about that at all? How is that
Hard
going
stance.
to work in PoE 2?
So it's one of those things where we're kind of a believer in, like, if you have too much free respecking, you kind of lose the feeling of what your character is very quickly.
Yep.
Like, it's very easy to feel like my character's just the same as every other character if you can free respec it all the time. So we have respecking in Path of Exile 2, but it's something that you don't just get to respec your whole character easily. You find items that allow you to respec them. On the other hand, for that's for passive skills, but for active skills, we just allow free changing between different skills all the time, because the active skills are just items. You can remove them and add them to your character as much as you like. And so we feel for the active skills, it's really important that you have the ability to experiment, play around with things. But for the passives, we actually think, like, if you're saying that my character is like a hybrid fire ice build, then you should continue down that path unless you're willing to pay the cost to kind of change that decision.
100%. People might hate me for it, but the fact that your path matters in Path of Exile, the fact that if you mess up, you need to gather these regret orbs to go back, right? It adds to the whole experience. You can have something like Diablo 4 where respecking seems easy according to a lot of people, but once you actually get into it, Path of Exile respecking is quite a bit easier than Diablo 4, where you need to farm up tons and tons of gold and everything scales to you, right? So you can't incrementally do it like you can in PoE, where if you're starting to change your build, you can scale back from reds to yellows or yellows to whites, or even go back to the axe to farm if you need to. In games like Diablo 4, you can't do that. Plus the way that you roll your gear in games like that, where your gear affects your skills and your abilities. It's almost impossible to really do that feasibly for an average player or a casual player like myself. I was having trouble respecking in D4, and I wasn't that too deep into it. The way PoE does it is the way to go. Your decisions matter. Your choices matter. This is a stance I agree with, in addition to them not giving a streamlined approach to skipping the campaign. The campaign is important. You need to make sure that you are building the best campaign experience possible that most people will enjoy doing every league or season, and finding optimal ways through it, adding variation to it, which they said they're doing in PoE 2, not trying to create an easier or simplified approach, right? They're focused on making the best campaign possible. That's a win. They want to make it good. That's their goal. They want people to enjoy it. They don't want people to say, all right, let's slog through this. I know a lot of people are at that point. We'll see what PoE 2 does, though.
We do have different philosophies about those two areas.
Yeah. Path 1, a lot of people have spent a lot of money in that game. Right?
By the way, the Drowned in PoE 2 look way better than the Drowned in Diablo 4. Just saying that. Looks like there's more variation too.
Right. You brought up that Path 2 is a separate game because you just started growing and growing from where you began. So how is that going to work? How is the monetization from Path 1 going to
A softball question. We know the answer.
Over, and how did you land on that determination?
So essentially, accounts are shared between the two games, and that means any purchases you've made in either game are available in both.
Big win.
So for example, all the stash tabs, all the skins, and other cosmetic stuff that you've bought in Path of Exile 1 is immediately available to you in Path of Exile 2. And when you're playing Path of Exile 2, if you were to...
Okay, just before we finish this here, they always use the phrase bought. I haven't heard them say the phrase earned. I hope that the challenge rewards that lots of us have been racking up for years and years and years in PoE 1 are usable in PoE 2. That would be absolutely dope. Please tell me this is the case. Maybe I should @ them on Twitter or X. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Try to get an answer on that.
To buy a supporter back and get some cool stuff, you can go back and play Path of Exile 1. And honestly, it's just a no-brainer from being consumer first. You know, from our point of view, that's how we would want the game to work when we're playing it, so we made sure it works that way.
Got it. How big is the team working on Path 2, and how are creative decisions landed on from a design perspective?
Ooh, come on. Okay. How big is the team working on Path 2? I hope they answer the Path 1 question too. Also, now I'm calling it Path like this guy. This guy, he's got me. What is going on? It's Path of Exile. All right, let's see. Will they answer this?
So the team's about, if you're talking about just like pure developers, you know, like artists and programmers and things like that, then it's about 100 people. The whole studio is about 180. So you know, we're getting a little larger over time.
Interesting. Is that downsizing from what they used to be? I thought they were over 240 developers or 240 employees. I wonder if they really scaled up initially for all the artistic design and stuff initially with PoE 2, and now that they've finished most of it, probably they've shrunk back down to the bare necessity.
But I mean, ultimately, it comes down to you know, like we try to have a very open culture where anyone can suggest anything. But at the same time, you need to have some kind of vision and some kind of direction. So Mark, who is the other game director, and myself, we basically together. Often a lot of it comes down to hashing out that stuff. But we try to take on as much as possible. One thing I don't.
Yo, I haven't seen these monsters before. They're like centaurs. That's awesome.
Want to do is just have, like, you know, large meetings, because I find that stuff to be quite unproductive, really. Like, I find like the perfect number of people in a meeting is 3. So then,
let's go.
When you get beyond that, it starts
Jonathan,
to turn into this kind of
yes.
cloud of like no one's really getting anything done. So yeah, I'm a fan of the smaller meeting myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, we found that to be pretty effective, and hopefully people at our studio feel like their ideas get heard still, and we can you know, we can do some interesting stuff.
Chris, do you feel like your ideas are being heard?
Yeah, I have a special like access to Jonathan, so I can make sure. I walk into his office. What are you doing? No, it's
Yeah. Having played the game a little bit.
Oh, okay. So they didn't talk about Path of Exile 1 at all. Interesting, though. So about 100 developers on PoE 2. That's honestly less than I thought. Truly. Interesting.
I'm reminded of, you know, some of the stuff I wish Diablo 4 did. One of the things...
The Diablo word again. All right. Will they go in? Oh, we've only got about 2 minutes left in here. I wonder if they're going to take any shots at all. Probably not. They're humble. They're respectable. Totally get it if they don't. But they could go in for the kill.
The team commented on was Diablo 4 in their Season 1 patch, and how it was pretty rocky for that team, right?
Okay.
What have you learned during your years working on Path of Exile that you are taking into development of Path of Exile 2?
We have extensive experience doing live operations of action RPGs now, more than a decade in outright release, plus a lot of beta period, dozens and dozens, I think like 46 or so expansions to Path of Exile. We've had...
Did you see that tracking of the hyena? Look at that. Sorry. Interrupting his answer. We know that they are very experienced with releasing update after update after update. I have a series on all their updates from the very beginning of the game, starting with the alphas and the leagues they did back then. They've been patching PoE 1 for years, and they understand rocky launches as well. They've had their fair share of rocky expansions, all right? They know what's going on. But with PoE 2, they are obviously putting in the time and the effort. They're making sure that this launch is smooth. I mean, The beta, I've heard, I think maybe from Gamescom, is the full game, or it was ExileCon. It's going to be the full game. All of it. Every act in the campaign, all 6 acts, and the end game. And that starts June of next year. Hoping I get invited to that, or hoping I make it in. I haven't bought a supporter pack in a bit of time. Having a tough time with my daughter. So, okay. Let's continue. Sorry. Also, watch the hyena tracking.
It's now more than a decade in outright release, plus a lot of beta period. Dozens and dozens, I think like 46 or so expansions to Path of Exile. We've had the,
46.
we posted the bad patch notes with the angry response many, many times. We understand where to nerf things when you need to, when not to, when to keep things punchy for players, and it's just some experience where immediately, like the operations team running Path of Exile 2 is literally the same people doing Path of Exile 1, so we'll be able to carry that forward.
Interesting.
But, you know, it's kind of one of those things where, yeah, sometimes hard decisions have to be made, right? And I don't envy it. I do not envy any company when you have to face the wrath of the community like that. It's no fun.
Yeah, they probably feel
you know,
terrible.
Sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you just have to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we get really invested in our characters and really salty when they get nerfed. So, yeah.
Yeah. Ideally, we'll be able to get things perfectly right the first time, so we never have to
Oh,
change anything.
that won't happen.
Flawless and no
Respectable, though.
Absolutely.
One of the questions, so Brian plays a ton of Path 1, and he wanted me to ask, will mapping as an endgame system return in PoE 2?
Ooh,
Absolutely.
okay. Did he already say yes? That has been confirmed on the Path of Exile 2 website. They didn't give any extra detail, but there will be mapping. I don't know if it's the Atlas. Well, it has to be the Atlas if it's going to be maps. So there will be the Atlas and maps, but they're going to be using the PoE 2 campaign bosses, which the modifiers cannot affect the monsters in the same way that they currently do, right? There's got to be a different pool that only affects bosses or something, because imagine something like that pirate boss with the random abilities that's been showed off a few times, affected by like 40% increased cast speed, attack speed, movement speed, just any mod really. Imagine a possessed version of the Perennial King or any other boss that we've seen in PoE 2. That'd be absolutely wild. All right, let's hear his answer.
Mapping is absolutely in the DNA of Path of Exile. We would not want to change that. But what we are changing is the framing around it. So we're not announcing what the end game is yet.
Okay.
But effectively, you can certainly expect maps to be there.
Yeah.
And there'll be, the storyline and sort of how that all unfolds will be new for PoE 2.
Oh, I'm so curious.
Probably early next year, I'd say.
Awesome.
Early next year.
I am so excited about Path of Exile 2. I need my fix when I'm not playing Diablo, and both games are excellent, so I'm really looking forward to trying out what you've created. Thank you so much. Path of Exile 2 looks fantastic, so keep it locked to IGN for lots of coverage of it as we get closer to launch. We've got lots more Gamescom studio ahead, so don't go anywhere.
Okay. That was a decent interview. It was pretty short. They didn't reveal any real new information, unfortunately, but it all sounds great. They did essentially give a number on the number of developers on Path of Exile 2, the fact that Path of Exile 2 will have maps, the mapping system, and that they'll reveal it early next year. That's exciting. That's really exciting, folks, because this really is only the start of the Path of Exile 2 content cycle. Right? They're going to be revealing new information, I'm guessing, every few weeks leading up to the beta. So this week or last week was Gamescom. I believe this coming week is going to be PAX West, and they're going to be there. I wonder if we'll start to get new juicy tidbits on some of the new classes, like the Mercenary. What could that be? It looks like it's crossbow focused, but could they be adding some other weapons into the game? Some secret weapons, maybe some firearms? Well, possible. Anything's possible. Path of Exile 2, this is a completely clean slate, right, folks? Not really. They're going to inherit a lot from PoE 1. It's going to be a banger of a game. I'm super excited. Let me know. Are you excited? Tell me in the comments. I'm looking forward to many more of these interviews. And in fact, I see in my recommended videos, it looks like there is another one that I have not watched yet. So if you guys liked this, if Exiles enjoyed, try reacting to content, let me know, and I might do the next interview as well. Until then, everyone, thank you so much for your support. especially all of the totally unhinged, insane, and uber exiles that are supporting the channel directly via Patreon or a YouTube membership, you are making this a reality, right? I never thought a year ago that I would be in the position where I am today. We're nearing 10,000 subs. That's insane. Thank you so much. I'm working on upgrading my computer in anticipation for the Path of Exile 2 launch, which is going to be massive. And hopefully I can cover all of it here for all of you. It's going to be great. So without further ado, Hala Moana.